imagine being paid just 1 cent per word to write stories. That's it, just 1 penny. So if you wanted to make rent, you had to write fast, write well, and write stories that sold immediately. This was the reality for pulp fiction writers back in the 1930s through 50s or so. And one writer figured out a system so effective that he could pump out compelling stories like a machine while still making each one feel rather fresh and exciting. Hello, my name's Jason. I'm a fantasy author who's completely obsessed with the mechanics of storytelling. I mean, I literally spent 3 years at Kindlepreneur analyzing plot structures and teaching other writers the craft of self-publishing and all of that. And today I'm going to show you the Lester Dent plot formula. This is the secret blueprint behind Doc Savage, who you may have heard of. But if you haven't heard of Doc Savage, you definitely heard of the superheroes that he inspired, like Superman, Batman, and basically every action hero since. This isn't just some dusty historical curiosity. This is a formula that is alive and well in every thriller you read and watch today. So it's a 4-part structure. The Lester Dent plot formula breaks down your story into these 4 equal parts. For roughly a 6,000 words short story, each section gets 1,500 words. Now, if you're writing a 60,000 word novel, each quarter becomes 15,000 words, etc. Simple math, powerful results. So here's what happens in each quarter. Starting with Act 1, known as the setup, which takes place in the first 25% of your story. In this, your hero should get hit with trouble in the very first line. No warming up, no lengthy backstory, immediate action. And during this first quarter, you introduce all of your major characters while they're already doing something. Your hero tries to solve the initial problem, but fails. The quarter then ends with a physical conflict and a plot twist that changes everything. Think about the Hunger Games. We have Katniss who's going about doing all of her stuff. We have action right away as the games start to ramp up. And then she is forced to go into the Hunger Games to save her sister. That's essentially the first quarter, especially once we get to the Capitol and she starts to learn everything that she needs. Now, Act 2 is the rising tension, which is the second 25% of your novel. Now you want to pile up more problems on your hero, and the tension keeps building through action and hooks. So you want to throw in misleading clues that make readers think that they know where the story's going. Then you pull the rug out, and by the end of the quarter, your hero's efforts are just falling apart. For example, in the Da Vinci Code, Robert Langdon uncovers clue after clue about the Holy Grail, and each discovery leads somewhere new. Each obstacle gets harder. You think he's getting closer to the truth, but by the end of the section, his progress has crumbled. But that leads us to Act 3, which gives us a little bit of a glimmer of hope and makes up the third 25% of the story. This quarter opens with your hero making some real progress. Finally, something is going right. But then everything comes crashing down to the darkest moment of the story, and your protagonist ends up in a rather hopeless situation. Everything they have tried has failed, and maybe even got worse. You'll see this in a lot of different stories where right as the third act is about to start, the protagonist has this moment of despair and hopelessness where they just don't know if they're going to be able to continue on. But from there, we get Act 4, which is the climax and the resolution. This is the final 25%. It's sometimes called Act 3 in the 3-act structure, but in the Lester Dent formula, it's the 4th act or the 4th chapter if you're doing a short story. And in this one, your hero works toward the ending using their own skills and intelligence. No rescue from outside forces. All of the setup from earlier pays off here, and you reveal one final surprise twist, then end with what Dent called the snapper, which is a punchline that leaves readers satisfied. Gone Girl shows this perfectly. Nick finally learns the truth about Amy's disappearance, but the revelation doesn't bring relief. He realizes he's trapped with a dangerous woman, and the tension continues right to the last line. Now, Dent didn't just create a structure. He built a complete system with specific requirements for each section. Every quarter needs a different type of physical conflict. So if you use fist fights in quarter 1, switch to a chase scene or sword fights in quarter 2. This variety keeps readers engaged without exhausting them. And you need what Dent called a different murder method for the villain. So even if nobody gets murdered in your story, this means that finding something unique about your protagonist's approach might be something you want to do. Maybe they use psychological manipulation instead of violence. Maybe they work through bureaucracy instead of direct confrontation. Your formula demands a menace which hangs like a cloud over the hero. And this background threat stays active throughout the story, creating pressure even during the quiet moments. So you can think of it like a ticking bomb, which often is actually used for this exact purpose. Readers know it's there even when characters aren't directly dealing with it. And each quarter ends with both action and revelation. The action provides immediate excitement. The revelation creates the story's direction. And together they create rhythm that trains readers to expect regular payoffs while keeping them guessing about the specifics. So Lester Dent created this formula in the 1930s when pulp magazines dominated American entertainment. He was born in 1904 in Missouri, and Dent worked as a telegraph operator making $45 a month. Then a coworker sold a story to a pulp magazine for $450, which was 10 times Dent's monthly salary for a single story. From there, Dent started writing. His first 13 stories got rejected. The 14th sold for $250. And by 1932, Street and Smith Publications hired him to create Doc Savage, which is a character who would appear in 181 novels and inspire generations of superheroes. But during the Great Depression, pulp magazines sold for a dime and paid writers 1 cent per word. Writers had to produce stories fast enough to survive, and the market demanded immediate action, constant excitement, satisfying endings. Dent's formula guaranteed all three. So he wrote over 425,000 words per year at his peak, and that's about 4 full novels annually. The formula made this productivity possible by eliminating guesswork about structure. He knew exactly what needed to happen and when. Doc Savage became the template for Superman, Batman, James Bond, and Indiana Jones. These characters all follow patterns Dent established, including heroes who solve problems through their own abilities, face escalating challenges, and triumph through the intelligence combined with action. For instance, Ian Fleming credited Dent with inspiring his James Bond novels, and Michael Moorcock used variations to write entire fantasy novels in 3 days. Modern thriller writers still follow Dent's escalation patterns. And we use it in my Story Hacker Gold community. Funny enough, you can check out the link for that down below. Now, television absorbed these principles completely. Every procedural drama that you've ever heard of essentially follows the same rhythm. Immediate problem, escalating complications, false solutions, final resolution through the protagonist's competence. And Marvel movies use the same 4-act structure as well, just stretched to 2 hours instead of 6,000 words. The formula works because it matches how humans process stories. We need regular emotional rewards to stay engaged. We want heroes who earn victories through their own effort. And we crave surprises that feel both shocking and logical at the same time. Dent figured out the math behind these psychological needs, which is why it's such a cool formula. Now, modern writers adapt Dent's formula by scaling it to different lengths. A novel might expand each quarter into multiple chapters. A screenplay might compress it into a tighter scene, but the proportions stay more or less the same, about 25% for each act. And you can even find software products like Plotter, which I do have a link to down below, which includes Dent's formula templates. And I've used it myself in the development of my plot module, which is a 40 chapter template for books, as well as my plot module for short stories, which very closely mimics this system. All you have to do is just plug in your story elements and it helps you track where you're hitting the right beats at the right time. But different genres require different adaptations. Romance writers might replace physical fights with emotional confrontations, for example, or mystery writers might substitute clue revelations for action scenes. The underlying rhythm, however, stays consistent. You have the conflict, escalation, revelation, resolution. And then the formula functions best as a diagnostic tool. Is the story feeling slow? Check if you're missing required conflicts. Readers losing interest? See if your escalation patterns follows Dent's progression. Does the ending feel flat? Make sure your hero solves problems through their own abilities. You can combine Dent's formula with other structures as well. For instance, you can use it for pacing while following the hero's journey for character development, or you can apply it to individual scenes when using Save the Cat for an overall plot, whatever works for you. The formula does play pretty well with others because it focuses on rhythm rather than content. You have the first quarter, which must establish investment. The second must escalate commitment. The third must maximize tension. And the fourth must provide satisfaction. How you achieve these goals depends on your own genre and style. I think Dent understood that readers have limited patience. They won't wait through pages and pages of setup for action to start. They won't tolerate long stretches without surprise or conflict, especially back in the pulp fiction days. And they certainly won't accept endings where heroes are getting rescued by coincidence. And this 4-quarter structure aligns with natural attention rhythms. Just when focus might wander, a twist arrives. Just when action might exhaust, the plot develops further. And just when hope might seem lost, the hero finds a way forward. And this is just understanding. It's not manipulation. He recognized patterns in what stories succeeded and which ones failed. He identified those common elements and systematized them, which a lot of people don't understand about these quote unquote formulas. Systemization of what we like as humans. It represents the distilled wisdom about human psychology and narratives. Modern neuroscience actually confirms what Dent knew intuitively. It's that our brains release dopamine during story surprises. We form stronger memories when information comes with emotional peaks. We feel more satisfaction when characters we identify with overcome challenges through their own efforts. So this formula endures because they have these psychological patterns haven't really changed as far as back as we know. Technology has evolved and the culture has shifted, but humans still respond to the same narrative rhythm that worked in the pulp era. So if this has been interesting to you, I have, you can get my version of the Lester Dent short story template, as well as my plot module by hitting the link down below. And if you want to go a little further, I have a link to Story Hacker Gold, where we get through how to realistically write up to a book a month, perhaps more. I've managed to do it in a week using AI in a way that productivity tool and not a replacement for your own creativity and thinking. If that sounds interesting for you, go ahead and check the link down below and I'll see you there.